Welcome to Dungeon Academics. I am Thomas and I will be your instructor. This is part of a series of videos looking at the mathematics of games and how it shapes both design philosophy and the way we play them. Today we will be exploring the Fireball Fiasco and how we are all slaves to the bell curve. This video has been split into two parts. In this we will be looking at the effects that the bell curve has on the Fireball spell, what we can do to break free of this mathematical oubliette, and what this all says about the philosophy of game designers. In the companion video, we will explore the mathematics behind this phenomena, including some statistics, specifically mean, variance and standard deviation, normal distribution, and combining datasets. We'll also be looking at the amazing work of the French mathematician Abraham de Moivre and his 300-year-old contribution to this topic. So, you have cast Fireball. A bright streak flashes from your pointing finger to a point you choose within range, and then blossoms with a low roar into an explosion of flame. Each creature in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on that point must make a dexterity saving throw. A target takes 8d6 fire damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Let me guess, you do about 28 damage. We are playing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and one of the signature spells is Fireball. What we are focusing on today is the 8d6 fire damage targets receive. As a reminder on the shorthand, a 6-sided dice is called d6, so 8d6 just means 8 6-sided dice added together. Here are 10 samples that I actually rolled. You can see that each was fairly close to 28, with an average of 26.6, and none of the rolls being more than 8 away from 28. Try it for yourself. Roll a few fireballs and see how your damage compares to 28. How often do you get damage less than 18 or more than 38? Why can I be confident that the damage for a fireball will almost always be around 28? The mean roll on 8d6 is 28, and the standard deviation is a little less than 5. I'll explain how I calculated those in the companion video. If we increase the power of the fireball by adding more dice, the distribution becomes even more predictable, as you can see in this chart. Shown are the mean, minimum and maximum damage values, the damage ranges that fall within 1 and 2 standard deviations, called the 68% and 95% intervals. The other key value here is dead space, the area of results that almost never happen, in 5% or fewer outcomes. As the number of dice grows, the area of dead space also grows, restricting the likely results to a smaller and smaller range. Perhaps a more user-friendly way of seeing this is shown here. I have shown the damage distribution for sets of d6 from 5 through to 14, though note that Fireball starts at 8d6. The red block shows the range of damages that occur about 68% of the time. The blue edges are the additional cases that take you to a 95% confidence in getting one of those results. I have normalized all the data in this graph, meaning the y-axis shows the full range of damage for each distribution in terms of percentage rather than absolute value, and the means have been aligned to the center. For larger numbers of dice, the central values are even more dominant, and the probability of doing noticeably more or less damage drops off even more rapidly. An analysis of these curves shows us how restrained the damage distribution is. As the number of dice increases, the size of the red and blue bars shrink, showing us that proportionally a smaller set of results is likely, and more results are doomed to probabilistic insignificance. Even with 5d6, the lowest 20% and highest 20% of possible damages almost never occur. By the time we get to 14d6, which would be a level 9 fireball, only the middle 40% of damage results have any reasonable chance of occurring. Why is this a problem? Do we want predictability in our games? Is it even worth rolling dice for a result with so little variation? The 8d6 fireball reliably produces a narrow range of results most of the time, and very rarely rolls notably high or low scores. The normal distribution curve predictably controls the outcome of the results. It is possible to say that we are slaves to this bell curve. It dictates what happens in the game with oppressive certainty. The bell curve robs us of the chance of heroic victory or calamitous failure, and replaces it with banal predictability. If you are designing an element of a game, and you need to generate random numbers with a wide range of values, you should avoid rolling a large number of regular dice and adding the results together, as this will almost always produce a narrow and predictable range of results centered around the mean. Is there anything we can do to avoid this? One option is to reduce the number of dice rolled by using higher valued dice. Large dice have a much larger standard deviation in relation to their mean. This means that their rolls are less predictable. A d6 has a mean of 3.5, and none of the results are far away from it, but a d12 has a mean of 6.5, and the highest and lowest results are much further away from the mean. I will explain how this is found in the companion video, but the key point is that for larger dice, the ratio of standard deviation to mean is much higher, so the dice are less predictable. We can compare the results of 8d6 and 4d12. 4d12 has a slightly lower minimum value, 4 compared to 8, and a marginally lower mean, 26 compared to 28, but the same maximum value. What is of interest is that the variance, and therefore standard deviation, is much higher, changing the ratio of standard deviation to mean from around 0.17 for 8d6 to 0.27 for 4d12. This means that the distribution of results we see are much more spread out. Let's centralize the two graphs, line up their means so the difference in distributions is clearer to see. We can clearly see that 8d6 is much more closely clustered around the mean, with the extreme values being much more frequent under 8d12. Note that I have trimmed the very edges of this graph for aesthetic reasons. 4d12 still matches the bell curve fairly well, so we can model its results as normally distributed. It looks similar in form to 8d6, so why would this be better? We can compare the results in a similar way to multiple d6s with a visual representation of the distribution. As we have changed the base damage for Fireball to 4d12, we should also change the damage bonus for upcasting to an extra d12 for every 2 full spell slot levels used, up to a devastating 7d12 with a level 9 Fireball. In each case, the distribution is a little more spread out than the versions using equivalent d6s. But even the mighty d12 succumbs to the irresistible power of the bell curve, and the probabilistic dead space grows as the number of dice does. The range of results for a level 9 Fireball doing 7d12 damage has a proportionally similar spread to an 8d6 Fireball, and that is already not that good. Using fewer dice with larger variances does work though, but perhaps not well enough to rewrite the rulebook. What else could we possibly try? There are sets of dice called high variance dice. Wormwood, the gaming furniture and accessories company, created a set some time ago. Other companies make and sell them too. The basic concept is that the dice has more faces with very high or very low results, with some results being repeated, and fewer results closer to the mean, but the dice keeps the same maximum, minimum, and mean scores. I'll be sticking with 12-sided dice rather than 6-sided, as we have seen that the larger the dice and the fewer you roll, the greater the variation possible. What could a high variance D12, let's call this V12, look like? We can create a dice with 3 sides each of 1 and 12, 2 each of 2 and 11, and 1 each of 3 and 10. There are no results between 4 and 9 inclusively. This will give a mean score of 6.5, the same as a regular D12. We can also calculate the variance the same way, as seen in the companion video. The variance of a V12 is over twice that of a D12, around 24 compared to 11.9. The standard deviation is about 40% more, 4.89 versus the D12's 3.45. What makes the V12 interesting is what happens when we roll and add the results. On this table, showing all the possible results from 2V12, we can see that the results fall into 4 distinct spaces. In the top left corner are the results from rolling low on both dice. In the bottom right are the results from rolling high on both dice. The remaining corners have one die rolling high and the other rolling low. This becomes a little clearer when we plot a frequency diagram. The bell curve has been conquered. By using high variance dice, we have thrown certainty into the chasm of chaos and freed ourselves. The central values around the mean are still the most likely, but there are significant probability surges for very low and very high values. This is the kind of randomness that I would like to see in the game. It should be pointed out that there are a few values that cannot be rolled, such as 7 to 10 and 16 to 19, but these values are neither high, low, nor in the middle. I do not mourn their loss nearly as much as the dead space in a bell curve. Before we make any more grandiose claims, let's see how the curve holds up for the number of dice a fireball would really use, a minimum of 4v12 and up to 7v12. That's a good-looking graph. There are concentrations of probable results, and each result from 4 to 48 is possible, though some are very unlikely. The outermost peaks, representing the highest and lowest totals, together represent about 1/8 of all outcomes. The concentrations representing values a little higher or lower than the mean represent about 2/8 of all results, and the central peak, which includes the mean, is about 3/8. Comparing the distribution of results to 8d6 and 4d12, we can see a much broader spread of results, with almost all of the results falling into the 95% interval, and the 68% interval for 4v12 being about the same as the 95% interval for 8d6. A more realistic graph focuses in on the most likely 68%, and then the next most likely results up to 95%. You can see islands of more likely results dotted across the distribution, and some patches of unlikely results spread all through the results. As we increase the number of high variance dice to 5, 6, and finally 7, the inescapable bell curve slowly starts to creep back into view. The scores closer to the mean become more prevalent, and the extreme high and low scores become vanishingly rare. But the data still breaks the bell curve in a pleasing way, and in my view, presents a vastly superior alternative. I have to note that the graphs appear a little wonky, as the results were gathered through sampling rather than rigorous calculation. Rolling 7v12 has over 35 million outcomes to consider, beyond the scope of this video. What conclusions can we draw from all of this? The bell curve of normal distribution governs the mechanics of many games. Knowing how it works and what it does can inform our choices. Whilst a single die is a reliable random number generator, rolling multiple dice yields highly predictable results. This may or may not be bad depending on the circumstances. Rolling 8d6 for fireballs rules out both very high and very low damage results. As larger dice have a higher ratio of standard deviation to mean, they produce less predictable results for similar mean values. They still follow the bell curve, but due to their lower quantity, less tightly so. Using non-standard dice, such as high variance dice, massively reduced the adherence to the bell curve, but in large numbers the bell curve starts to become apparent. Designing games to not rely on large dice rolls is a choice we have to make. We have options in how we play and create our games if we understand the maths of how they work. My own conclusion for this is to not only limit the amount of dice rolled at any one time, but also to ensure that if there are multiple dice being rolled, they should not be regular dice. A good set of high variance dice tailored to the games you are playing should be in the hoard of every dice goblin, and players, DMs and game designers should embrace the enhanced randomness they can create. There may even be an opportunity to create sets of high variance dice, specifically D8 and D12, and to rewrite some of the core spells and abilities that roll multiple dice to craft a better gaming experience. I recently watched Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and I feel that the whole film feels like a role-playing game where everyone has been exclusively using high variance dice. Every action is either a critical success or a catastrophe, with very few normal but boring results. Is this how I want my games to go? Perhaps. Let's see. As an extra note, thank you for listening to my ramblings. As you can probably tell, I like games and maths, and as many people do, I have spent a long time thinking about how I would create my own tabletop role-playing game. I find the D20 system of D&D lacks granularity, and many percentile systems, such as Battlelords by 23rd Century Productions, require too much maths from the players, which is odd for me to say given that I am a maths teacher. But I think the maths should be hidden inside game design, not laid bare for players to deal with. I love dice pool mechanics, and I especially love the Star Wars role-playing system from Fantasy Flight Games with its narrative dice. But I also feel the mechanic is a little too awkward with its plethora of dice symbols. One of the reasons I made this video is for my own exploration of dice pool mechanics. It is clear to me that any system that relies on rolling multiple dice has to use high variance dice of some kind, as that dreaded bell curve is the death of opportunity, and thus the death of fun. My own personal project game uses a mechanic called Raft, which is based around a pool of 6 very different dice, with players changing the dice they use based on their character's skills and abilities relevant to the task at hand, and then using those dice to prevent hazards, overcome obstacles, resolve challenges, and activate equipment and abilities. It's a long way from being usable, but I know I will have to design some novel dice to make the game have any variability, despite its larger dice pool. Maybe one day I will be ready to tell you all about it. So, after all of that, thank you. I made this video for me, but if you found it interesting, educational, or just an aid to drift to sleep, thanks for coming along with me. Next time, I'll be looking at the Great Weapon Mystery, why I think Great Weapon Master is one of the best feats in the game, but not for the reason most people think it is. This concludes the lesson. Please place any questions in the comment section and enjoy your next game, whatever it may be. Addendum. Colby, from the always excellent D4 Dungeons & Dragons Deep Dive, released a rather splendid video called The Moon Singer, a build inspired by the equally amazing Dungeon Dudes. A theorized wizard-druid multiclass was constructed, ending up with a blade-singing bear who really enjoys dragging its foes into a cloud of daggers. In essence, by grappling an enemy into your 9th level cloud of daggers, and then having them start their turn in it too, every round your target will take 36 d4 damage. I've spent a long time trying to convince you that fewer, larger dice is better, but this gives a whole load of the smallest dice there is. Let's see the numbers for this. A single D4 has a mean of 2.5 and a standard deviation of around 1.2. This means the standard deviation is around 45% of the mean. When we roll 36 D4 together, we can assume the results form a near-perfect bell curve. The mean is an impressive 90, but the standard deviation is only 6.71, around 7% of the mean. This is very small. With 95% of outcomes occurring within 2 standard deviations of the mean, almost all rolls will deal between 76 and 104 damage. This represents only 27% of the space between the minimum and maximum damage. 73% of the possible results are in the probabilistic dead space at the edges of the bell curve. Is there any point having a distribution where so many results are functionally impossible? There is less than a 1 in 15,000 chance of getting a result more than 4 standard deviations from the mean. That's a damage roll of less than 63 or more than 117 on those 36 D4. And remember that the results go from 36 to 144. We have been lured into a false sense of randomness by dice and lazy game design, and I think we deserve better. This would be another perfect place for high variance dice to shame, replacing pairs of D4s with high variance V8. Thanks for sticking with me, and if you want to dive deeper into the maths that I have used here, please check out the companion video linked in the description. And of course, enjoy your next game, whatever it may be.